Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Gaming Vo here, back at it with our NBA video. Today I'll be ranking NBA starting shooting guards from all 30 NBA teams. Same categories as last time: MVP, All-Star, average starters, below average starters, and scrubs. Again, scrubs does not mean these guys shouldn't be playing, but maybe not necessarily starting at shooting guard. Leave a like, subscribe for this video. Wash your hands, guys, during this coronavirus. Um, let's just jump right into it. Starting with RJ Barrett for the Knicks. I'm going to put him at below average starter. He's having a decent rookie year, not really efficient, struggling a little bit with turnovers. Not bad scorer, not a bad defender. Got to work on his right hand. Definitely a left hand dominant player. RJ Barrett's potential, I could see him being an all-star in the near future, but at the moment, not really a high-impact player. The Knicks aren't very good this year. Again, definitely a guy who's below average, at least for this year. Danny Green, same thing. I liked Danny Green last year. I was really on him. I thought he could be a really nice piece for the Lakers. Hasn't played as good for them as I thought he would. Definitely not been the great 3-point shooter he was last year and the last couple of years. Still really efficient. Still a good three defender. His defense took a little bit of a step back this year, but overall still great defense from Danny Green. Not a great playmaker, so that's why I don't have him in that average starter category. But definitely a guy from year to year could be in that average starter category. Yeah. Evan Fournier, definitely going to put him in that average starter. Great year for him. Been on a scoring tear for a couple weeks. I think he's leading the Magic in scoring. Defensively, isn't that great. Athletically, can't really keep up with some of the faster shooting guards in the league. But as a pure scorer and shooter, great player. Great handle. Average starter for Evan Fournier. Same thing with Tim Hardaway Jr. Last year and a couple years before, he'd probably be in that below average starter category, but this year he's hitting like 50% of his threes from the right corner. He's just been great for the Mavericks. Great shooter. Not a bad defender for them. Has been playmaking a little bit. Definitely an improvement in that area. He's been everything the Mavericks have asked for in terms of a 3-and-D guy, a shooter, a corner guy. So definitely an average starter for this year. Same thing with Caris LeVert. Now last year before his injury, he was looking like an all-star. This year, not as great. He had that 50-point game, but a little bit less efficient than last year. Still great guy. Still, well, not great guy. I mean, I don't know him personally, but still great. Still a great player. A good shooter, good playmaker. Not a terrible defender. Knows how to can put the ball on the floor. Knows how to get to a spot. So definitely not a bad guy. I don't know if he's a bad guy. Definitely not a bad player. But yeah. Same thing with Gary Harris. Probably the best defensive player on the Nuggets. He's definitely been regressing over the last couple of years. People were thinking he'd break out as an all-star one of these years, or at least by now. Definitely not there offensively. His shooting's gotten worse almost every year, but still a great defensive player, still a great team guy. Not a bad shooter. He can play make a little bit, but definitely taking a step back over the last couple of years. So Victor Oladipo is interesting. I'm gonna come back to Victor Oladipo because he's a pretty interesting case. Drew Holiday, definitely an average starter. A couple years ago he was an all-star. He can still be on that level, but the ball's not in his hand as much this year. So his numbers aren't looking as great. Not a bad shooter, pretty good playmaker, pretty good defender. Just an all-around good guy, one of the better players in this category for sure, but not where he was a couple years ago. Fred VanVleet, also average starter. This is a guy who's made huge leaps in his playmaking, in his shooting, in his scoring. Even defensively, he's not a huge minus because of his size. Fred VanVleet's story has been crazy, going from the G League all the way to starting point guard or starting shooting guard on an NBA Finals team. It's definitely a great player. Definitely struggles a little bit with his size. Efficiency sometimes is an issue for him, but overall, just a great player. Not at that all-star level quite yet, but he could be in that Drew Holiday position where he could make an all-star team 1 or 2 years, just having a nice season. James Harden, obviously in that MVP category. His scoring numbers are ridiculous. A pretty good rebounder for a guard. A great playmaker. Not getting the defensive credit that he really deserves. He's been one of the better post defensive players this year, surprisingly. Just a like a great scorer, generational talent. The volume of shots he puts up at his efficiency is just insane. Definitely having an MVP type season, not getting the recognition he deserves. People are probably getting a little tired of voting for James Harden, but still the best shooting guard in the league by far. Colin Sexton, I'll put him at below average starter for this year. He was the point guard last year, or at least earlier in the season. Um, his shooting took a little bit of step back. He's a pretty good defender, not a great playmaker, not a very efficient scorer. Definitely could see this guy getting high rotation minutes in his future if he doesn't develop well. But at the moment, not a great shooting guard, not a great shooter just in general. So below average starter for him. Uh, Athletically, he's great. He's quick. He's got a nice vertical. His lateral quickness allows him to stay with offensive players, but just that playmaking ability isn't quite there yet. His shooting's taken a little bit of a step back from last year, so below average for him. Bryn Forbes, I'm also gonna put it below average. Definitely a nice player, a nice shooter, not a great defender, not a great playmaker. Bryn Forbes is a guy who playing in that Spurs system isn't getting the ball in his hand just as much as maybe he would need to develop, but just overall not a bad piece. Just needs to step up defensively and playmaking. That needs to improve. Devin Booker, an all-star. His defense has been getting a little better over the last couple of years. Obviously, a prolific scorer, great shooter, just all around great offensive player. Stuck on the Suns, they're not very good, but Devin Booker definitely is an all-star. Should have been an all-star last year, probably too. Same thing with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm actually going to put him in that all-star position. I love Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he's underrated. I think playing under Chris Paul is going to develop his passing skills, his point guard ability. When Chris Paul leaves, he's going to be their starting point guard again. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a guy with a bright future. I could see him being an MVP candidate in his future. Definitely 6'5", pretty tall for his position. Lanky, he's got athleticism. He's got everything he needs to be successful. Malik Beasley, I'm going to put him at average starter. He wasn't playing great on the Nuggets, but as soon as he got traded to the Wolves, immediately starting playing better. His three-point percentage shot up. Definitely a change in system. The ball's a little bit more in his hands. Definitely better for him. He's not a guy who's going to be averaging 20 points per game for you, but definitely a nice role player. And yeah, we'll go on to CJ. CJ McCollum is an all-star. Although he never made the all-star team, it's most likely because it's in the Western Conference. It's a lot more difficult for him to make that guard role. CJ McCollum's a great mid-range scorer, a nice three-point shooter, great playmaker, can get to the rim with ease. Him and Dame over there in Portland playing wonderful. His biggest issue is defense. Not really tall for his position. Definitely an undersized backcourt in Portland. But definitely a guy who can impact the game offensively, and should definitely be considered an all-star. Josh Richardson, I'm going to put him in average starter as well. Took a step back from last year. Maybe he's not getting as many shots as he would normally. I mean, I wouldn't know. I'm a Sixers fan. Definitely been disappointing from the three-point line. Not been spacing the floor like they would have wanted to. But just in general, not been bad, not been great. So average starter is where he belongs. Damian Lee has had a good season, but I'm going to put him at scrub. He's probably closer to average, below average starter than to scrub, but we need a guy in here, and Damian Lee is probably the worst player in this list from the looks of it. Just not a great all around player. He can shoot. He's athletic, but yeah, he not a great playmaker. Not a very efficient scorer. So just not a guy you really want starting for you at shooting guard. Bradley Beal all-star as well. Now, it's a crime that he didn't make the all-star team this year. I think that's something that the coaches need to be investigated. But Bradley Beal's a wonderful scorer, great three-point shooter, great playmaker. He's stuck on the Wizards, but nothing he can really do about that now. He's locked up long term. Not a great defender, but many of these shooting guards aren't really great defenders, so that's not too bad. Jaylen Brown, I'll put at all-star too. He's probably right in between, but I've really liked him this season. He's definitely taken a step up in terms of shooting and playmaking. He's an underrated defender, really nice ball handling skills. He gets better every year. I could see him actually making the All-Star team one of these years. So yeah, Jaylen Brown's an All-Star for sure. Same thing with Paul George. Last year, Paul George was an MVP candidate. This year's been struggling a little bit with injury and efficiency because of that shoulder. Any given year, Paul George is an MVP candidate. This year just happens to be a little bit injured, a little roughed up, so that's where he goes. Dylan Brooks, average starter. He's been having a great season, averaging like 15 points per game. Great shooting from him. Not bad defense either. Just not really an athletic player. Not really a great playmaker. That's not what he's asked for, but average starter for him is fine. Kevin Huerter, I'm going to put below average starter. He hasn't been starting all the games for the Hawks, but started a couple games, probably around 30. I'm not sure. But yeah, he's a nice shooter, but not a great athlete, not a great defender by any means. So just below average starter. Jimmy Butler's an all-star. I really like Jimmy Butler. I wish he stayed in Philly. Great defender, great playmaker, great scorer. Not a great three-point shooter, but definitely has the leadership skills to take the Miami Heat far. Devontae Graham, I'll put at average starter. Early in the year, he was probably an all-star. He's been switching between that point guard and shooting guard position, so he was in the last video. Definitely a nice playmaker, a nice three-point shooter, but not very efficient. Had the worst efficiency in the paint of all players in the NBA, which is not good. That's definitely not all-star level, but definitely a guy. If he improves that, if he can get a little bit quicker, maybe a little stronger, he could definitely hold his own in the paint. Probably could get up to that all-star level. Donovan Mitchell's an all-star. A lot of great shooting guards in the league right now. Yeah, Donovan Mitchell, really athletic, nice shooter, nice playmaker, nice scorer. Really nothing to knock about him. He definitely needs to improve his defense and playmaking to get onto that MVP level. His size really restricts him from being a great playmaker. Can't really see over taller defenders when he needs to make the right pass to the middle, but still not a bad playmaker by any means. Bogdan Bogdanovic, same thing. I'm gonna put him at that average starter position. He's pretty good. Definitely a piece that a lot of teams would like. He's clutch. He can shoot. He's not terrible on defense. He can finish at the rim. The Lakers wanted to trade for him early in the season. Those were the reports. A couple teams were interested in him. Definitely a valuable piece for the Kings. Wesley Matthews put at below average starter. Now it's interesting. The Bucks have a great starting five, and he really fits into that role well with his 3-point shooting, but individually just not a great playmaker, not a great defender at this point in his career. Definitely not a great rim finisher. He really just asked to shoot threes. And yeah, it could be argued he could be in here, but at the moment, probably in that below average starter category. Tony Snell, I put at scrubs. He's just not good. There's nothing really to say. He hasn't been a good shooter at any point in his career. Hasn't been a great defender. No knock on Tony Snell, but that's just what he is at this point. Thomas Satoransky, put in that average starter. I like Thomas, or Tomas, whatever, however you want to pronounce his name. I like him. He's a good shooter. He's a good playmaker. He's a valuable piece on the Bulls. One of the better free agency signings this year. Just not a guy that is going to go out there and get you many points, though. Not a great scorer. Definitely a nice playmaker, though. So that's really what's holding him up here. Not a great defender either. He's tall for that position. I think he's around 6'6". Definitely a nice player. So finally, Victor Oladipo. Obviously, last 2 years, or 2 years before his injury, the year of his injury and the year before that, he was an all-star. This year struggled with efficiency coming off that quad patella tendon rupture. I know he's going to get back to form. That's not a horrible injury to have. Not going to put him in scrub. I'm probably going to put him in average starter this year, but I could definitely see him elevating and getting into that all-star position next year or some couple years down the line from his injury. Just a wonderful player. Victor Oladipo, nice guy. He seems really nice, at least. He has a nice singing voice, at least. Yeah, anyway, guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe. Going to be coming out with a few more of these. I'm recording this video on April 10th? April 11th? April 10th. So, yeah. I'm just probably gonna come out in a couple days, but, yeah. Leave a like, guys. Subscribe.